Okay, hello and welcome to week 8 of social science research methods. Today we're going to be talking about ethnography. What is it and how do we do it? So let's jump in. Um, as a methodological tool, ethnography is most useful for trying to understand social phenomena rather than um, perspectives, collective perspectives. So remember last week when we were talking about interviewing and the ways that interviewing and ethnography are connected in a lot of ways. We said that interviewing tells us about how our participants perceive the answers to the questions that you're asking. Well, ethnography, in a lot of ways, bypasses that perception focused lens and allows us to see how a social context comes together to create or perpetuate a particular social phenomena amongst the people present. So that's, if you're looking to try to understand and examine things like that, you would use ethnography as your methodological tool. How to do ethnography. So we're going to now go through 8 actually very simple steps for how to do ethnography. And in some places, this might feel rudimentary to you, but much like interviewing, much like most qualitative data collection, quantitative data collection as well, but in a different way, there's a lot of muscle memory that is gained via repetition, practice. And so you'll notice that our labs for this part of the section, not unlike our labs for the quantitative part of the section, are asking you to practice doing this process of data collection and analysis, even though you're not engaged in a full research project right now. And the first time that you do it for a full research project, it may feel a little uncomfortable. And the second time, it'll feel a little less uncomfortable and less and less and less and less and less until you get your PhD in sociology and you're doing it all the time and it feels like second nature. But it is something that is going to feel uncomfortable for you because we're not used to existing in social settings as a neutral observer. We're used to, and you will be participating. When we talk about ethnography, we mean participant observation, but we're used to engaging in the world as a part of it, essentially. And ethnography asks you to simultaneously be a part of this setting, this social context, whether it's location or time or place more abstractly. How do these people come together to behave in particular ways that they would, you're theorizing, behave accordingly, whether you, the scientist, were there collecting the data or not? And therefore, that phenomena, that social phenomena that you are identifying is rooted in the culture of the context, of the location, of the people that are engaging in that particular behavior at that particular moment. Okay, so let's jump in. Step 1 is, what am I studying? What is my research question? What social phenomena am I trying to examine by going into what locations, amongst what people, and to what end? These are all pieces of a research question that you would put together for ethnography. And remember that as social scientists, we're really concerned with making sure that our research question and our methodological tool choice work together. So if we're using a tool like ethnography that's about social phenomena, then we need to write a question that is also about social phenomena. Okay, let's move to step 2. Who am I studying? So this is a really important part of ethnography. What is the community of people in what location or what space or what organization are you going to be examining for these social phenomena? How does the setting impact the research question and vice versa? What's the relationship between who you have decided to study and by extension, where you will be studying them and what you will be examining as a part of that study? Okay, step 3, you have to decide how you're going to enter the site. Mostly when we're talking about ethnographies, if we're talking about ethics, and we're going to get into ethics and experiments in a couple of weeks, you want to identify yourself as the researcher. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to go into the setting as this participant observer dressed, in a suit or dressed in a lab coat or having a big notepad or glasses. You don't have to, and you probably don't want to perform the role of scientist very obliquely, very ostentatiously, because one of the disadvantages of ethnography is that it requires a lot of time in terms of data collection because you have to allow the other participants in the setting to get used to you such that their behavior reverts back to normal. Anytime a new person enters a setting where that person normally would not be, everyone else is going to act a little strange. You don't want that strange data. Remember, you want the normal data. You're trying to understand how this community of people, how people in this location or this social context would engage with each other, whether you were here or not. And so the way that you perform your role as scientist is really an important step of ethnography. There are instances where you might do a blind ethnography, in which case you would not reveal yourself to be the scientist. If, for example, that might put your life in danger or make data collection impossible. You could argue with the institutional review board at your school that you needed to do a blind ethnography. Otherwise, it is important to say, hey, I'm collecting data for this project. I'm going to be here a while, hanging with you guys, participating and watching. That also means that when you get into the field, you have to be very careful about what you're doing to not re-tip off people that you are the scientist and not just another part of the group. As a part of this decision about performance, you want to go to step 4, which is to get consent. And you need to get consent to participate. You need to get consent to collect data, and you need to get consent around anonymity and confidentiality. So are you using real names? Or are you not using real names? Are you using pseudonyms? Are you using letters or numbers? How are you describing the organization? Are you blinding that as well? Or are you using real names of the organization, setting and context? And all of those decisions depend on the research question, the community of people that you are going to be engaging with as part of the data collection, and the potential harm that could come to them based on the choices that you make. And again, this is really important. Schools, institutional review boards will harp on this because this is where their protection comes from any backlash from participants saying that they were negatively impacted by participation in your research, which is what you don't want to have happen. Okay. Next, enter the field. This is the most exciting part. So come into this community, this setting, this location, or this context, performing scientists the way that you have decided will best allow you to collect normative data. Don't forget to continue to participate as opposed to just observing. Think about how you will collect field notes? Are you just going to try to commit things to memory? Are you going to run to the bathroom and jot things down every once in a while? Are you going to put things in your phone? That might be a way where people just think you're doing something else, but you're actually collecting data. These are all decisions that you need to make as you enter the field. And when we say the field, what we mean is that setting, that location that you've chosen for data collection. Okay, once you are in the field, you're not only collecting this participant observation data, but you're also going to want to collect additional interview data. And that's one of the reasons why we do interview before we get to ethnography in the sequence of this course. These are those informal interviews that we talked about in last week's lecture, where you're not going to come with an interview schedule, you're not going to set up a formal time. You are participating in this setting or context, this other person is participating in this setting or context, and if you get a few seconds alone, you're going to ask them some questions, probably generally about what's happening at that moment, as opposed to some pre-decided questions, as an additive to the participant and observational data that you're collecting as well. So that is step 6. Step 7 is to look backwards. Now let's look at the historical contexts and information about this particular setting or group of people that helps us better understand what we're seeing and engaging with right now. And that is a really important piece of this process, which sometimes gets lost. And then lastly, we code and analyze for patterns. So this is where you probably have hundreds and hundreds of sheets of paper of stream of consciousness notes or screenshots from your phone of notes that you took in the bathroom, and now you have to look for patterns. You can use, and this is the same thing for interviews. When you look for patterns, you can use programs like Atlas TI or in Vivo. I am old school. I prefer to code things by hand using color coordinated highlighters. And every time I identify a code, I assign it a different highlighter color, and I have a key for those things, and that key shrinks and shrinks and shrinks as we pare those codes down to the most important findings of the data. Um, Analysis is the hardest part of this to describe in a way that makes normative sense. It's really something that you have to do and try. So the lab assignment for this week is asking you to analyze data, and we'll also do an activity about data analysis during our synchronous discussion, just to unpack step 8 a little bit more. Okay, active learning exercise for this week is to think about how we can, as social scientists, continue to do ethnographies in the age of COVID-19, in the age of social distancing. Assuming that we're going to be social distancing and wearing masks for at least another year or two, does that mean that we can't do ethnographic data? And if we can, what changes, innovations might we engage in to allow us to study social phenomena in context? That's all that I have for you this week. I'll see you in discussion. Bye-bye.